Key. Story of the prophet Malachi and the call to return to God. In the years following the return of the Jewish exiles from Babylon, the people of Judah had rebuilt the temple and restored their worship practices. However, over time, their zeal for God had waned, and they had grown complacent in their faith. It was during this period of spiritual decline that the Lord raised up the prophet Malachi to call his people back to faithfulness. Malachi's message was one of rebuke, challenge, and hope, urging the people to examine their hearts and return to God. Malachi began his prophecy by declaring the Lord's love for his people. He said, "I have loved you," says the Lord. But the people responded with skepticism, asking, "How have you loved us?" Malachi reminded them of God's faithfulness in choosing Jacob over Esau and preserving the nation of Israel despite their many failures. Yet, the people had forgotten God's love and had begun to doubt his care for them. The prophet then turned his attention to the priests, who had become negligent in their duties. They were offering defiled sacrifices on the altar, bringing blind, lame, and diseased animals instead of the best of their flocks. Malachi rebuked them, saying, "When you offer blind animals for sacrifice, is that not wrong? When you sacrifice lame or diseased animals, is that not wrong? Try offering them to your governor. Would he be pleased with you? Would he accept you?" The priests had dishonored God by treating him with contempt, and Malachi warned that the Lord would no longer accept their offerings. Malachi also confronted the people for their unfaithfulness in marriage and their disregard for God's covenant. Many had divorced their wives to marry foreign women who worshipped idols. Malachi declared, "The Lord is the witness between you and the wife of your youth. You have been unfaithful to her, though she is your partner, the wife of your marriage covenant." He reminded them that God hates divorce and desires his people to remain faithful to their commitments. The people had also grown stingy in their tithes and offerings, withholding what belonged to the Lord. Malachi challenged them to bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, promising that if they did, the Lord would open the floodgates of heaven and pour out blessings so abundant that they would not have room enough for them. He said, "Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it, despite the people's failures." Malachi's message was not without hope. His message was not without hope. He spoke of a coming day of the Lord, when God would purify his people and bring judgment on the wicked. He said, "But for you who revere my name, the Sun of Righteousness will rise with healing in its rays, and you will go out and frolic like well-fed calves." This promise pointed to the coming of Jesus Christ, who would bring salvation and restoration to all who trust in him. Malachi also prophesied about the coming of a messenger who would prepare the way for the Lord. He said, "I will send my messenger, who will prepare the way before me. Then suddenly the Lord you are seeking will come to his temple. The messenger of the covenant whom you desire will come." This prophecy was fulfilled in John the Baptist, who prepared the way for Jesus, the Messiah. The story of Malachi challenges us to examine our own hearts and lives. It calls us to honor God with our worship, our relationships, and our resources. It reminds us that God's love for us is unchanging, but he desires our wholehearted devotion in return. And it points us to the hope we have in Jesus Christ, who fulfills God's promises and brings healing and restoration to our broken world. Through Malachi's prophecy, we are reminded that God is faithful, even when we are not. His love endures forever, and his promises are sure. His story inspires us to live with integrity, to honor God in all we do, and to eagerly await the fulfillment of his kingdom.